Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest from the live radar, run through the latest weather warnings as we are going to see some exceptionally cold air moving in later this week. But before then, we still have some significant disruption due to wind, rain and even a bit of snow. We have an amber warning issued for rain across parts of Scotland throughout the rest of today. Then look at the latest UKV, which now does get into the first kind of 3 or 4 days of this very cold spell. It is looking exceptionally cold initially. Not too much snow at the beginning. Yes, snow showers for northern and eastern areas, but not too much in the way of major snow for the rest of this working week. But into the weekend, the risk does increase substantially. And this is all due to the low pressure system that's giving us headaches at the moment, pushing in. Now, of course, we'll look at that in detail on the longer range charts. But of course, in the last couple of days, we've seen a bit of a wobbling from those longer range charts with this individual low pressure system pushing in, bringing very mild air, and that milder air starting to dominate through early January. However, if you are looking forward to colder weather, that scenario has disappeared from from the majority of runs. Now, even the ECMWF has backed off from that scenario, but we are still seeing some milder air pushing in. Now, what that means, of course, is significant uncertainty, but it is significant uncertainty over where we will see heavy snow, where we will see heavy rain, and where, of course, that cold, mild air divide will sit. And, of course, all the complexities associated with that low pressure system. So we are still seeing a wide array of scenarios only, just for this weekend, 4 or 5 days away, still seeing lots of uncertainty. And of course, we'll explore that in the second half of the video. But the scenarios we've seen in the last couple of days that completely end the cold spell later on through the weekend, kind of through the 5th, 6th of January, those have now disappeared. And regardless of what happens with this low through the weekend into Monday, it looks likely after that we will return back to something very, very cold. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. At the moment, it is really confusing exactly what's going to go on. And I know many people watching this will be very confused as well, as we are continuing to see some wobbling. But hopefully, we should kind of set the scene here exactly what the models are showing. Now, at the moment, we've got, as you can see from the live radar, an area of low pressure sitting over central Scotland. We've got heavy rain to the south, some heavier rain to the north, and even some snow, and that extends all the way into Norway. Now you can see where the rain snow line is, and that is just to the north of Scotland at the moment, so we're all in very mild air. But this snow line will be slowly sinking southwards and will clear southern England come the evening of New Year's Day, so about 24 to 36 hours time. This exceptionally cold air to our north will have completely cleared through, but before that occurs, we've still got a lot of heavy rain and strong winds left in these low pressure systems in the milder air. So still a lot of disruption to come, but the winteriness isn't too far away now. Do put on the temperatures this afternoon. Where we've got heavy rain, of course, it is slightly cooler, but actually at the moment, temperatures are actually pretty mild with a west to southwesterly wind arriving. With this low pressure system, it is bringing fairly mild air. It's still chilly, it's still early in the winter, heading into early January now. It is still very cold in general, compared to most of the year, but comparatively to what we'll see later this week, it is pretty mild. If you move over to the weather warnings now, you can see through the rest of today, we've got a whole array of warnings. We've got this rain warning issued for Northern England and Wales, and it expires at 11 a.m. tomorrow. It's coming into force in the coming hours, and it's for that persistent area of rain that we've got across Northern England at the moment, slowly tracking southwards as these low pressure systems do clear. Wind warnings issued further northwards for Northern England and southern Scotland, expiring at 11 p.m. this evening for strong westerly winds, 50 to 60 miles per hour, perhaps up to 70, and the same warning for Northern Ireland. Again, I'm not going to cover these in too much detail as these haven't changed substantially since when we looked at them yesterday. But we have seen a shift in these warnings further northwards. The precipitation is actually not quite as extensive and is positioned slightly differently, so the rain and snow warning has actually been shrunk. It still expires at 4 a.m. tomorrow, and it will turn to snow more through this evening as that snow line does come back across Scotland. But further southwards, we have got an amber warning for rain. Now, it does expire at 7 p.m. 5 p.m. this afternoon, and you saw by the live radar a minute ago, if we just go back to it, there's not actually that much in the way of heavy rain remaining. And I think that's because the low pressure system is slightly further northwards, so all of this heavy rain that's falling out to sea was initially forecasted to fall over land. So at the moment, it does look like we're not seeing as much rain as we anticipated. If we look at the past 24-hour precipitation, still lots of heavy rain, but with an amber warning, you'd expect to see more persistent oranges and even reds. So at the moment, not seeing as much rain as we initially anticipated, which is, of course, a good thing. Less disruption through in towards the bank holiday tomorrow. So a good thing we're seeing at the moment. Not as much rain as we initially anticipated. You can see here the amber warning was for 50 to 70 on top of what has already fallen, but you see in the past 24 hours most areas have only seen 50 millimetres. You know, in this amber area we'd expect to see 100, 150 with all of that rain falling. So luckily not quite as much. Further northwards though, across the Shetland and Orkney Islands, we do have just a snow warning, and that's because these areas look likely to just sit in the cold air, so continue to see that heavy snow falling throughout the rest of the evening. Of course, it is islands, small islands, so of course we have got a lot of effects from the sea, and that will mean it's a little bit more marginal if this were a larger landmass, but still a few centimetres of snow is expected here. Into the subsequent days, you can see the first day of January, still got those snow, rain and snow warnings issued further northwards, but I've got this snow and ice warning issued through much of Wednesday into Thursday, as we do start to see snow showers packing in from the north, as we do see the low pressure systems clearing. Again, we're looking at 1 to 3 centimetres at low-lying areas, up to 5 to 10 above 300 metres, and it will turn to snow at all levels come, especially the evening. Further southwards, we still got that rain warning issued, and then we've got this larger wind warning issued across much of England and Wales, again for kind of 45 to 55 widely, up to 60 a few inland areas. And of course, within the school front, we could see maybe 65 to 75, again until 3 p.m. tomorrow. So nowhere near as strong as we thought a few days ago. We thought this could even have been a named storm, but it still is disruptive, just not quite as significant as we initially thought. And into Thursday, just got that snow and ice warning issued and expiring at 9 a.m. Now, looking at this, you think, oh, the disruption is over Thursday morning. However, that is not the case. We will likely see warnings change and upgraded for the subsequent days, Thursday, Friday, and especially into the weekend, I think. But I don't think they're issued at this stage just because of the uncertainty. It might be one of those where we see a big upgrade, big update in these warnings, either this afternoon, evening, or probably more likely into the morning. Because, of course, this very cold air is arriving, and we have to see that now on the latest UKV. All that rain is moving through at the moment, and eventually as we head into New Year's Day, that weather front in those northern areas, we have got a warning for rain, will strengthen, and you see a squall feature developing along it, and that is dividing the mild air from the cold air. Easy, very cold air starts to dig in for Scotland, and we start seeing more of this turn to snow. Eventually that squall feature clears to the southeast, and more of the precipitation in the north falling as snow now as the very cold air digs in. And as I said, through the evening of New Year's Day, we are all in very cold air through the evening, snow showers packing in for northern and northeastern areas, and then as we head into Thursday, more significant snow showers, especially for those northern and northeastern coastal regions. Again, from the looks of this, could be a snow and ice warning issued for those coastal regions. And then you can see as we head into Friday, perhaps some more substantial snow showers issued for Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Again, perhaps a warning issued for that. And then slowly into the weekend, we do see a bit of a ridge of high pressure building in. And what this does is it flattens the flow, less showers, and we start to see drier conditions, especially further southwards. But it's a very short break. Look to the southwest. Thick cloud building in, and we start to see some precipitation. Now this is that low pressure system that's been causing headaches, starting to move in, and pretty much all runs have got us to this stage where it's pushing in from the southwest. It's all about its track. Where does this system go? Now the last couple of days, some of the runs have brought this low up towards Scotland. Cold air remained well to our north, and we've all gone in to very mild air. Rain, wind, temperatures, even up towards the double digits, as it does turn very mild. However, That was the wobble, and instead, majority of runs have pushed that low further southwards, and at the moment, either have the low sitting across southern England, or perhaps as far north as northern England. That's kind of where our area of uncertainty is. Now you might think that's not too far, a couple hundred miles, at 5 or 6 day time frame, that's not too bad. But it makes all the difference. If it's across northern England, we'd expect significant snow across northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland. If it's sat towards southern England, then of course significant snow in the far south. And again, the intensity of the low could change. If it's slightly shallower, smaller, then of course it would be further southwards, it wouldn't push in as much. We might not see any snow at all, and it might stay all out in the Channel or across northern France. And of course we could see any scenario in between all of those. So that's the uncertainty we're playing with at the moment. On the grand scheme of things, it's not actually that much uncertainty. But it's because of the significance of snow that we could see as a result of the movement in this low. That is why it's causing headaches, because there is still a bit of a span of about 10 to 15 degrees at 850 HPA for London, for example, between some of the mildest ensemble members and some of the coldest. And of course, the ones with the cold are producing potentially 10 inches of snow, maybe even more in some places. The milder runs are producing an inch or two of rain instead. So we'll have to wait and see exactly how it does play out. We'll try and run through it in some longer range charts in a minute, but I'm just trying to emphasise, is what's causing the headaches at the moment. After that though, we are fairly certain that low will clear and it will go much colder once again. If you look at the upper air temperatures, you can see it is fairly mild at the moment. Very cold air is just sat to our north. But you can see as we head through the next couple of days, exceptionally cold air pushes in for all the -10 isotherm, pushing in for northern areas and even getting quite far southwards there. As we enter the weekend though, the cold air does start to get cut off as we do see the northerly wind top a little bit with that higher pressure, but it will still remain very cold into the weekend. And then you can start to see milder air trying to push in from the far southwest there as we head into Sunday. And again, it's where that dividing line sits up, almost a 10-degree temperature contrast, 15-degree potentially at places. Already sitting there, and it's where that sets up, we will see significant snow. If you look at the wind gusts briefly as well, you see they are going to be fairly strong over the coming days, but nothing, out of the ordinary. Yellow warning worthy, of course, 50-60 miles per hour, but as we head into the new year, they should slowly die down. Still be strong, perhaps Thursday, Friday along those North Sea coasts. We have got that very cold northeasterly wind. Not only will it be windy, but it will feel exceptionally cold as the wind chill won't make it feel well below freezing. And eventually, later in the week, that does get cut off. And of course, with the approaching low from the southwest, winds will pick up once again. And of course, where we see snow, the risk of some blizzards. If you look at the max temperatures, you can see for the last day of 2024, it's pretty mild for most, 10 or 11 degrees. Into New Year's Day, very mild in the far southeast initially, 11 or 12, further northwards, well below freezing. And by the middle of the afternoon, all areas start to get into the mid-single digits, and overnight, widely dropping below freezing as the exceptionally cold air pushes in. And for Thursday, ice day for many, not getting much above freezing. That's just showing you how exceptionally cold this air mass is. Again, it's not record-breaking, but comparative to what we've seen over a number of years, this is one of the coldest air masses we've seen in quite some time. 1 or 2 degrees at best. Similar conditions into Friday, exceptionally cold overnight, widely -5 to maybe -10. By the afternoon, once again, 2, 3, 4 degrees. You can see Friday, Saturday, the surface temperatures might be a couple of degrees higher, maybe a touch more above freezing, and that's because we see the very cold air getting cut off for a short period of time, but it's still very cold, especially overnight, temperatures well below freezing. And look at Saturday afternoon, maybe more towards 3 to 5 degrees. Still cold, still well below average, just not quite as significant as it was in the prior days. And of course, Sunday morning, as that very big area of low pressure arrives, widely below freezing. So the ground temperatures will be very cold, the surface temperatures, the 2-meter temperatures will be very cold. Of course, it's all about what falls from the sky at that point. And that is what we've got to deliberate now. Now, if you go over to the latest GFS, you can see the low pressure system's clearing at the moment. The GFS, since it had its wobble a couple of days ago, I think it was on Sunday, it's now been fairly bullish with the very cold pattern. We can see into the weekend, we see that brief flattening of the high pressure system, and that turns it slightly mild. It's still cold, just not quite as cold, and of course reduces any snow showers. But then the low approaches from the southwest, but the GFS keeps it well to our south. It doesn't push in at all. And look where the mild sector is. It's across France. So this is kind of the optimum cold scenario where actually cold air doesn't get displaced at all. I do doubt this because most runs do have that milder air much further northwards or much closer at least, but can't discount it. GFS being very bullish with this idea. Whatever happens though, subsequent days, exceptionally cold, very strong northeasterly to easterly winds, and that persists all the way to the end of the run, where eventually low pressure systems try and push in, and this is where again we could see more significant snow. Again, I just want to emphasise what that sort of GFS run would produce. Again, not gospel, just taking this as sort of what would happen in that scenario. You can see again that rain clearing, heavy snow showers piling in, a brief cut off there Thursday, Friday into Saturday, and then that low approaching from this far south that actually does push in. We do see the northern edge of the snow. Most of it though is across Europe, but just about gets in for southern areas. And then again, more areas of significant snow. And then eventually into the longer range, we see a bit of a topple of high pressure. So we do lose some of that wintriness. But then we see Atlantic systems pushing in, coming up against the cold block, and further areas of heavy snow. So this GFS produces about 5 or 6 bands of snow for England, Wales, Republic of Ireland. Lots of snow showers further north. So this would be a winter wonderland if this run came off. But again, I will emphasise this GFS is one of the coldest options within the operational runs. If compared to the GEM, this has been a bit more pessimistic the last couple of days. It kind of similar to the ECMWF, but today it's back on board with something much, much colder. Again, that block clears westwards, and you can already see the outlook across the North Atlantic slightly different. Already this low is much closer, and it tries to push in. Now, where does the milder sector set up? Across northern England. And we'll see heavy snow there on the boundary across northern England into southern Scotland before it clears, and then look, we go exceptionally cold once again. So GM pushes that milder sector much, much further northwards. Would see milder air for a time in the south for about 24 hours before eventually it does go very cold and wintry once again, and eventually ends the run with very strong easterly winds that would be cold and wintry once again. 2 metres temperatures. Look at that, very, very cold come the 10th of January. So GEM has got a long-term colder spell, but it does have a blip there through the weekend and the start of next week, if we do run it back, where we do have that milder sector moving through on Sunday. Again, it clears by Monday evening, but it is still pushing quite significantly. About 100 miles, or more actually, a couple hundred miles further northwards than the GFS, and it's that uncertainty which, as I said, is causing headaches. GFS, heavy snow in the south. The GM, heavy snow across Scotland. And of course, we could see a scenario in between. If you look at the ECMWF, which has by far been the most pessimistic run in the last 24 hours, it was very poor for any snow yesterday and for any long-term wintriness. But it's moderated a little bit colder once again today. Nowhere near as cold as the GFS. But it is a little bit colder, so it's kind of narrowed that gap in the differences, but still a significant difference between all the scenarios. You can see the low pressure systems clear to our east. Eventually, we see the cut off of the northerly flow, and the low pressure system arrives from the south. But look at it, look how far north it is. It's up towards Scotland, and all would be seeing rain in this scenario. Eventually, though, we do see the northerly winds piling back in, and then we see further areas of potential wintriness, but eventually the mild air does win out, and wins out significantly there in the longer term. So ECMWF, very cold initially, slightly milder, then does go colder again for a few days, before milder once again. So it would be a chilly spell, there would be snow around, but it's nothing significant. So yeah, midnight run, once again, is very pessimistic. Now, the reason why I'm not saying this with too much vigour is because we have got the 6 o'clock run. Now, I don't normally look at the 6 o'clock or the 6 p.m. run, and that's because they only go out to 144 hours or so. And I don't see a real point in looking at that because we normally look at these runs for sort of day up to day 10. But the uncertainty does come into this day 6, day 7 time frame. So if you run through it, you can already see that low is much further southwards, and you can see it develops across South Wales and across southern England here. So already about 100 to 200 mile shift southwards in the latest 6 o'clock ECMWF, much more in line with what the GM was showing and closer to the GFS. So that's why that midnight run, I would say, is definitely one to still keep an eye on, that sort of scenario. But you see the 6 PM run has corrected it further southwards and is much more in line with what other runs are showing. But I think the midday run, that's going to be a big one. If that still is very mild and the GFS is still very cold, then unfortunately the headaches are going to continue. But hopefully they finally do converge, since this low pressure system is now only 6 days away, or even 5 days away come this evening from arriving. Finally, I do just want to show the UK Met Office run, similar to the 6 o'clock run for the ECMWF. It only goes out to day 7, so we don't normally look at it on day to day, because we normally look at the UKV, which goes out to day 5 and is generated from the same data. But this goes out to day 7, and of course that is where we've got significant uncertainty. And this is one of the highly regarded models, and of course it's the Met Office's own model, and based on a lot of warnings and a lot of their longer range forecasts of this model. And you can see low pressure system clear to the east, and of course see that very cold northerly wind arriving through the latter part of this week, and eventually does flatten a little bit, and then the low approaches from the southwest. But again, watch its track. It pushes in, but stays to our north and is a lot more elongated and nowhere near as well developed. That is one of the biggest features, nowhere near as well developed, and that will decide how far northwards it gets, how complex that system is. And the snow clears eastwards, and I say snow because if we do zoom in, you can see the rain snow line is across southern England, clears eastwards, and then we go back into bitterly cold northeasterly winds, temperatures well below freezing in many areas, and you can see we're locked in now for a further spell of significant cold, significant wintriness. As you can see, the block is still there towards Greenland and Iceland. So UK Met Office run, which is normally pretty in line with the ECMWF. They normally do follow suit together. You can see today its midnight run is much further south than the ECMWF and is much more in agreement with the GFS and the GM. Again, it's another day where not all the runs do agree, and they all give widely different scenarios at the surface. So we'll have to keep an eye on it, but you can see the sort of pattern I think is now starting to evolve. That low pressure system pushing in, bringing some milder air, but not lasting. But we just don't know where that mild air will be exactly. Now, if you look at the ensembles to finish, you can see the GFS is fairly bullish now on that cold air remaining firmly in place through the weekend, with the milder sector very close by. Some runs still bring it in, about 6, 7, 8 maybe, so maybe still a third to a quarter of the ensemble members, but majority are very cold, and it's been persistently like this for the last sort of 3 or 4 runs now. But one thing that's cropped up in this run especially is the amount of precipitation, and most importantly, the amount of new snow depth spikes. These are big snow depth spikes. These are multiple of these runs have got 5 to 10 centimetres, which is getting towards the significant level for London at least. Beyond that, you can see it's exceptionally cold, and that colder pattern lasts all the way to the 12th or even 14th before turning milder. So GFS ensembles are exemplary here for a sustained, blocked, exceptionally cold spell with lots of snow. And this, of course, is for the far southeast. And look at those 2 metre temperatures hardly getting much above 2 or 3 degrees for about 10 days, maybe even longer. Just look at that dip the next 24 hours and then not getting much higher. You can see those anomalous milder runs, but majority stay exceptionally cold. And if we do compare it to Glasgow, that's even colder, maybe not getting much above freezing for a week. That is ridiculous. Of course, it is Scotland, so it is colder. It is closer to the colder air, and of course we would see a lot more convection than potentially sort of weather fronts, which would be more apparent further southwards, but regardless, very similar conditions. However, if we compare it to the ECMWF ensembles, look at this, a massive spike there through the weekend and start of next week. That's the milder sector moving in. Runs still keep it colder, but it's a complete role reversal to the GFS. A third to a quarter keep it very cold, majority keep it very mild, before turning cold after, and even the longevity of the colder spell nowhere near as strong. So ECMWF is very much at odds with the GFS ensembles here. It is trending towards the idea of the GFS, definitely trending more towards that, but it still is firmly at odds. There is still a lot of disagreement that, again, we'll have to resolve in the coming days. I continue to say this, I think the next run will be the most important run. It's impossible to say when we'll finally see a resolution, but I definitely think there will be a run within the next 24 to 48 hours where it all clicks and all the runs agree. So we'll have to wait and see, but you can still see the uncertainty we do have. If we do emphasise, though, how it is really all about that milder sector, Glasgow, not too much of a rise. A little bit of a rise there with the operation run, showing you how anomalous it was with it that far northwards, but most keep it very cold. Which just shows you the ECMWF is very similar in terms of its ensembles to the GFS. It just has that milder sector 100 miles further northwards than the majority of the GFS does. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But regardless, very interesting times, potentially very disruptive conditions arriving for somewhere into the weekend, in most of these scenarios, there will be heavy snow. Again, we've not talked about that too much because we don't know where it will set up, but definitely a possibility of something pretty significant for this weekend. And if we ignore all of that, if we ignore all the snow, if we ignore this low pressure system, regardless, the 3 days leading up to it will be exceptionally cold, frosty, and of course temperatures well below freezing overnight. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. I'll keep you updated, and of course we'll have a video out soon as we see any major shifts, but of course I do think we'll see some resolution in the next 24 to 48 hours, and I said I'll update you when we do get that resolution. So thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.